best friend's roommate tipped me off that she was planning on convincing my boyfriend to hook up with her because of the grief she feels after her partner passed, and now she's begging me to forgive her. I have been in a relationship with my boyfriend for a little over 3 years. Things with us have been pretty steady. We've had the usual ups and downs, but there's never been anything that shook the foundation of the relationship. We've lived together for almost 2 years now. Nothing's ever been perfect, but I trusted him and felt secure in what we were building. My best friend Leah lost her partner about 6 months ago in a freak accident. It was sudden, tragic, and honestly, it broke her. They'd been together for years, and she hadn't really known life without him. After the funeral, Leah was just a shell. I've never seen her like that. I did what I could, brought groceries, helped with bills, picked up calls at 2 a.m. when she couldn't sleep. I even let her crash at our place a few nights when it got too lonely for her at home. I didn't mind it. I figured if there was ever a time she needed someone, it was now. A few months ago, Leah moved into a new place with a girl named Lena. I've only met Lena a handful of times, mostly in passing. She always seemed polite and a little reserved, but not cold. I didn't think too much about her until I got a message from her out of nowhere. It was long, sent through Instagram, and I had to read it twice to process it. Lena said she felt bad for interfering, but didn't think she could sit on it any longer. According to her, Leah's been talking about my boyfriend in a way that made her uncomfortable. She said Leah started making comments like, "If I could just have one night with someone who understands," and "he'd get it if I explained what it's like to lose someone." Lena said she initially thought it was grief talking, but it kept happening. Apparently, Leah said she thought my boyfriend would be the type of guy to comfort her if she opened up to him the right way. The way she said it didn't sit right with Lena, and she said she'd feel awful if she didn't at least let me know. I didn't know what to do with the information. It felt like too much and not enough at the same time. My first instinct was to protect Leah, tell myself she's grieving and probably just lost in her head right now. But at the same time, that pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. The way she's been around lately, I started thinking back and connecting dots I wish I hadn't ignored. She's always gotten along with my boyfriend. Nothing inappropriate ever happened, at least not in front of me, but there were moments, compliments that felt a little too detailed. The way she looked at him sometimes when she thought no one was watching, the way she hung around a little too long when we'd all be in the kitchen, and I'd step out for a minute. At the time, I wrote it off as clinginess, just someone needing connection after a loss. I didn't want to be the person who questioned that, but after Lena's message, I started looking closer. I didn't tell my boyfriend about it right away. I just wanted to see if anything stood out. For about a week, I watched how she acted around him. Nothing major happened, but something just felt off. It wasn't obvious. It was small things. She'd touch his arm when she was talking to him, laugh a little too hard at jokes he made, or say something like, "You always know the right thing to say," and hold eye contact longer than necessary. I also started to notice how she'd only really talk to me when he wasn't around. When he was, her whole focus shifted. She used to talk to both of us equally. Now it felt like I was the third wheel in every conversation. I didn't know whether to bring it up to her or not. I kept going back and forth. She's going through something I can't even imagine, and part of me felt sick thinking I could be accusing her of something so inappropriate while she's still grieving. But I also couldn't ignore how uncomfortable I'd started to feel in my own home around someone I've known for over a decade. Eventually, I decided to talk to my boyfriend. I didn't want to tiptoe around it anymore. I showed him Lena's message and asked if anything had happened or if Leah had ever crossed a line with him. He looked genuinely surprised and a little unsettled. He told me nothing had happened and that he'd never picked up on her doing anything weird, but he said he'd be more mindful going forward and that if it would make me feel better, he'd keep some distance when she was around. I appreciated that, but it still didn't feel like enough. I needed more than reassurances. I asked if she had ever said anything that made him uncomfortable, anything he might have brushed off at the time. At first, he said no, but then he paused and said there was a moment a while back that felt off. One night when I had gone to bed early after a long shift, she stayed up talking with him. He said she got really emotional and asked for a hug. He didn't think anything of it at the time because it seemed like she was just having a rough night. But she held on too long, and when he tried to pull away, she tightened her grip before letting go. He didn't say anything then because he thought maybe he was overthinking it, or that calling it out would make things worse for her. I didn't love that he hadn't told me earlier, but at the same time, I understood why he didn't want to blow up something that may have just been awkward. Still, it bothered me that he downplayed it. I also decided to message Lena again and asked if we could talk in person. She agreed, and we met up that weekend. She seemed nervous, but once we got going, she didn't hold back. She said Leah had been more open lately about her feelings toward my boyfriend, that she thought he had emotional depth and could give her the kind of closeness she missed. Lena said it started as venting, but turned into something she couldn't ignore anymore. Apparently, Leah once said if she could just feel that kind of love again, even once, it might help her move on. That's when it clicked that this wasn't about grief anymore, or at least not just about grief. It felt more like justification, like she'd told herself that because she was hurting, it would be okay to cross a line as long as she got something out of it emotionally. I haven't confronted Leah yet. Part of me wants to just walk away and never talk to her again, but that feels too easy. I want to hear her say it to my face, whether she meant it, whether she thought I wouldn't notice, or if she even cared how this would affect me. I don't think I'll ever see her the same again, but I still haven't decided what to do next. I feel like I've lost my footing with everyone involved. Would you confront her directly, or just leave it alone and cut things off quietly? Update 1. I sat with Lena's message for about a week before doing anything. I wasn't sure what to believe or how to process it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions based on a few vague screenshots and a feeling. But once that seed was planted, I started noticing things I wish I hadn't. Leah had always been a little clingy, especially since her partner passed. I figured it was understandable. She lost someone who basically lived in her skin for years. I didn't mind letting her vent or hang around. I didn't mind the late-night calls or the mornings she'd randomly drop by just to get out of the apartment. But after that message, I couldn't help but look closer. She started complimenting my boyfriend more than usual. At first, it was little stuff like, "You're so lucky, he always remembers small things," or "He just has this calming energy, it's rare." It didn't sound off on its own, but then she'd linger during group hangouts, stay behind in the living room when I'd go clean up in the kitchen, and laugh too hard at jokes that weren't funny. It felt subtle, but strategic. One night we were all watching something on Netflix and I stepped out to take a quick work call. I came back maybe 10 minutes later, and she had moved closer to him on the couch. Nothing crazy, but closer than usual. I walked in and said something like, "Move over," trying to keep it light. She laughed and said, "Don't worry, I'm not trying to steal your man," which is exactly the kind of joke no one makes unless it's at least halfway real. I didn't even respond. At that point, I started to feel like a fool for not doing anything sooner. I couldn't decide if I was being overly sensitive or too passive, but I did know I needed to talk to my boyfriend before this got any worse, so I showed him Lena's message. He was confused at first, then he got quiet, said he didn't want to make anything dramatic but that he had gotten a weird vibe from Leah recently too. That she'd been overly emotional around him a few times when I wasn't there, bringing up how hard things were for her and talking about how nice it must be to feel safe with someone. Eventually, he admitted there had been one moment that made him uncomfortable. A few weeks ago, Leah came over when I was at work. She said she needed help putting together some paperwork. He let her in, and they were going through stuff at the dining table when she suddenly said she missed physical affection. Then she asked for a hug. He said he thought it was innocent at first, but she held on too long enough that he had to pull away himself. He told her it was weird and kind of stepped back from her physically after that. He didn't tell me because he didn't want to add to everything she was going through. I didn't yell or break down. I just told him not telling me made it worse. I understood not wanting to hurt Leah, but I wasn't going to be the one caught off guard by this. He apologized and said he was willing to cut her off completely if I asked him to. I told him we weren't there yet, but I'd figure out what I wanted to do after I talked to Lena. I met Lena that weekend at a small coffee shop near my work. She was nervous when she showed up, and I could tell she was wondering if I thought she was exaggerating. But I didn't, and she could see it. She told me Leah's comments had started about 2 months ago. At first it was vague stuff about how she felt broken and thought no one would want her again. Then it turned into specific things about my boyfriend. She'd mention how emotionally intelligent he was, how stable and grounded he seemed. According to Lena, Leah said multiple times she could feel herself falling for him, and that maybe it was okay because she and I were so close I'd understand. Lena said she tried brushing it off at first, but then Leah started saying things like, "If I could just have one night of what we used to have, I'd finally be able to move on." That line really got to me. Leah wasn't just hurting. She was planning something. Lena told me she warned her more than once not to go there, that it would ruin everything. But Leah kept saying she wasn't trying to hurt anyone, just wanted to feel alive again. Lena said the moment Leah started talking about testing the waters, that's when she decided to message me. I left that conversation feeling numb. I wasn't angry the way I thought I'd be. I was just tired. I'd been bending over backward for months trying to be there for her. We paid for groceries when she couldn't. We checked in constantly. I kept making excuses for her when she flaked on work or got moody at gatherings. I even let her stay in our apartment for nearly 2 weeks when she was too depressed to be alone. Now I was sitting there, wondering if she had been using me as a buffer the whole time, if I'd just been a path to him. I haven't confronted her yet. I know I should, but I've been dreading it. Because once that conversation happens, there's no going back. And part of me still wanted to believe there was a version of this, where she just made a mistake and could come back from it. But the more I think about it, the more I realize this wasn't a mistake. It was a series of choices she kept making. The worst part is that she still texts me like nothing is wrong. She sent me a TikTok the other day with a "this reminded me of you" message. I didn't respond. She noticed. She sent a "are you okay?" follow-up later that night. I didn't answer that either. I don't know where this is going next. I still haven't told anyone else, not even my sister. I've just been sitting with all of this and trying to decide what version of me I want to be when I finally deal with her. I'm not interested in being cruel, but I'm done being quiet. Update 2. After everything, I ended up confronting Leah. I didn't want a scene, so I asked to meet her at a park we used to walk through together. Public, but quiet. I knew if I waited much longer, I'd keep second-guessing myself until I did nothing, and that wasn't going to happen. Whatever she was going through, grief didn't make it okay to circle around my relationship like it was a backup plan. She looked worn down when she showed up. Dark circles under her eyes, a half-finished coffee in her hand, hair up like she hadn't slept. She sat down next to me like nothing was wrong, like this was going to be a normal catch-up. I didn't waste time. I told her I knew about what she said to Lena. I told her I knew about the hug, about what she told my boyfriend when I wasn't there, and that it didn't feel like harmless venting anymore. It felt deliberate. It felt like testing the waters, and it felt like betrayal. At first, she just stared at me. Then she laughed, a kind of shaky, forced laugh, and said Lena was exaggerating, that Lena had always wanted something to hold over her. She said I didn't understand how lonely she's been. She said it like it explained everything. When I told her my boyfriend had confirmed it, that yes, she said she was lonely. Yes, she asked for comfort. Yes, she pushed boundaries. Her whole demeanor changed. She went quiet. Then she started crying. And I let her cry. I didn't interrupt. I didn't comfort her. I just sat there. Eventually, she admitted to most of it. She said she missed the feeling of being wanted, that when her partner died, everything in her went quiet, except for the ache. And that ache got louder when she saw how steady my relationship was. She said my boyfriend reminded her of him, same calm energy, same way of making people feel safe, that she knew it was wrong to even think of going near that, but she thought if she could just feel that kind of safety again, just for a night, something inside her might click back into place. Then she said it. She looked at me, red-eyed and puffy, and said, "You have everything. I have nothing. One night wouldn't have ruined your life." I didn't say anything for a few seconds, because I couldn't believe she said that out loud. Like I was supposed to agree. Like my relationship was strong enough to survive being used as someone else's emotional graveyard. And I don't know what kind of person she thought I was, but I'm not someone who hands over pieces of my life just because someone else is in pain. I'm not cruel. I helped her. I was there when she was barely functioning. I let her stay in our apartment. I covered her rent once without making her ask twice, and in return, she stared at what I had and decided she deserved a piece of it. That's not grief, that's entitlement. I got up and told her I needed space, that I didn't think I could trust her again. She asked me if I could forgive her, if I could just try to understand where she was coming from. I told her this wasn't about understanding anymore, it was about what she actually did and how she justified it. That even now, she was still trying to make herself the one who got hurt the most. She didn't fight me, she didn't beg, she just sat there, still crying, and said, "Okay?" When I got home, I told my boyfriend everything. He was angrier than I've seen him in a while, mostly at himself. He kept apologizing for not telling me about the hug, for trying to protect her feelings over my right to know. I told him I appreciated that he didn't fall for it, but that I needed honesty, even when it's messy, especially then. Later that night, Lena messaged me. She said Leah was spiraling, crying non-stop, accusing her of betrayal, packing up her stuff to move out. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't care. I blocked Leah the next day, on everything. I didn't make a public scene. I didn't message anyone about it. I didn't try to ruin her life. I just cut her out, quietly, fully. Because the truth is, there was a part of me that had already started grieving the friendship before any of this happened. Little things, like how she'd grown more withdrawn but still competitive, or how she made subtle comments about how easy my life seemed. I ignored them because I thought grief was pulling her apart. Turns out, it was also reshaping the way she saw me. Not as someone she trusted, but someone who had something she wanted. And once I realized that, it stopped being complicated. I still feel guilty sometimes, not for ending things, but for how long I ignored the warning signs. I wanted to believe the best in her. I thought that if I just stayed patient, she'd pull through it, and things would go back to normal. But that version of normal was gone the second she started seeing my relationship as something she was owed. I don't think I'll respond if she reaches out again. There's nothing left to explain. I saw the line, and she stepped over it. And even now, after everything, I think the only thing she regrets is getting caught. Update 3. It's been almost a month since I blocked Leah. I haven't reached out, and she hasn't tried to contact me directly either. Lena told me Leah moved back in with her parents a couple weeks ago. She also said she's finally going back to therapy and taking it seriously this time. I don't know how much I believe that, but it's not really my place to decide anymore. I've been trying to get back to some kind of normal, but it's been harder than I expected. I didn't realize how much I'd been holding everything together until I wasn't anymore. I keep going over every moment with her in my head, times when she seemed off, or things she said that I brushed aside because I thought she was just grieving. I still don't regret supporting her through that. I do regret not drawing firmer boundaries sooner. Some people in the comments of the last update were incredibly supportive, which I appreciated more than I can say. Others, though, said I lacked empathy, or that I was too harsh. I tried not to take it personally, but it stuck with me more than it should have. And maybe it hit a nerve because I've had my own grief to work through, even if I didn't talk about it in the earlier posts. My dad passed away during my last year of college. It was sudden, and I didn't really process it properly. I threw myself into school, then into work, and just kept moving forward. When Leah lost her partner, something about the way she grieved reminded me of how I didn't. I think that's why I let so much slide. I kept telling myself that people in pain act out sometimes. I thought if I just showed up for her, she'd eventually come out of it. I didn't expect to be the one getting hurt in the process. Even now, part of me still feels guilty, not because I did anything wrong, but because I let it get this far before I pulled away. I kept rationalizing her behavior. I kept making space for her, even when it started affecting my relationship. I didn't want to be the one who gave up on her when everyone else had already stepped back. But at the end of the day, trying to protect someone else's grief doesn't mean letting them trample over yours. My boyfriend and I are okay, but it's been tense. We've had a lot of conversations since everything happened, mostly about boundaries, but also about trust. I told him I was hurt that he didn't mention the hug when it happened, and he admitted he was scared I'd overreact, or that it would make things worse when Leah was already in such a fragile state. I get it, but I also told him I'm not going to accept that kind of silence again. We're still together, but things feel different now. Not necessarily in a bad way, just different. We're both more cautious, I guess. Not with each other exactly, but with how much we assume the other person can handle. I don't think we're in a bad place, but I also don't know what this means long term. I love him, and he's been trying, but this whole thing put a spotlight on things we hadn't really talked about, like what kind of people we are when things go sideways. I haven't heard from Leah directly, but I did get a letter last week, a real letter, handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. I didn't open it right away. I actually left it on my kitchen counter for a couple days. I didn't know if I wanted to read it at all, but eventually I did. It wasn't a long letter, but it was the first time she actually apologized without making excuses. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, and that she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. She wrote that what she did was selfish, and that she's ashamed of how she let her grief justify hurting someone who only ever tried to help her. She didn't ask for a response. She didn't try to explain things away. It felt different from every other conversation we'd had. I still haven't written back. I'm not sure if I will. I'm not angry anymore, but I also don't think I want her in my life. I believe she's sorry. I believe she knows she crossed a line, but that doesn't undo the damage. That doesn't erase how quickly she shifted from someone I trusted to someone I couldn't even leave alone with my boyfriend. That kind of break doesn't just patch itself up. Lena and I have stayed in touch loosely. I check in on her every now and then. She's been looking for a new roommate and told me she feels relieved to have her space back. I thanked her again for telling me what she did. I don't know how much worse things could have gotten if she hadn't stepped in, and I'm glad I listened to her when I did. That whole situation could have gone a very different direction if I had brushed it off. One thing I've learned through all this is that it's okay to walk away from people who are hurting if they start hurting you too. Grief isn't a free pass to cross every boundary. Being in pain doesn't make someone the victim in every situation. I'm not going to keep carrying guilt for finally choosing myself. I haven't figured out if I believe in full forgiveness. Not yet. But I also don't hate Leah. I don't wish anything bad on her. I want her to get better. I want her to stay in therapy. I want her to have a life that isn't defined by who she lost or who she tried to hold on to after. I'm just not going to be part of it. Maybe that's what forgiveness looks like sometimes, just choosing not to carry someone else's actions like they're your own burden. Choosing to leave the door closed, even if you could open it again. That's where I'm at right now. Trying to move forward without needing every piece of closure tied in a perfect bow. Just letting things be what they were and not trying to rewrite them into something softer. It's not easy, but it feels honest. Final update. It's been just over 3 months since everything happened. I wasn't planning on posting again, but I guess I needed to write this out to get some distance from it all. A few people reached out asking if Leah and I ever reconnected. The short answer is no. I never replied to the letter. I read it twice when I first got it, folded it back up, and left it in my desk drawer. It's still there. I haven't touched it since. There was a moment where I almost wrote something back, but it passed. It doesn't sit on me like anger anymore. Just something that happened that I've made peace with not reopening. I think what got to me the most was how quietly everything settled afterward. There wasn't some dramatic unraveling. No huge confrontation beyond that last time. No second wave of drama. Just space. Leah moved back in with her parents, and according to Lena, started therapy again, seriously this time. Whatever that means. I don't know what's true anymore when it comes to her, and I'm not really interested in finding out. I used to feel bad about blocking her, especially when I thought about how much pain she was in. But I've talked it through in therapy enough now that I've stopped second-guessing myself. Her grief was real, so was mine. And what she tried to do to my relationship under the guise of grief wasn't okay. I spent too long trying to carry both her pain and mine, and that was the problem. That was always the problem. There was this belief I held onto that if I just showed up enough, listened enough, gave enough, I could help her find her footing again. That if I kept being the safe friend, she wouldn't cross certain lines. I realize now how naive that was. Just because someone's hurting doesn't mean they won't hurt you back. Sometimes it makes them more likely to. My relationship didn't survive this either, which I kind of saw coming. I want to be clear, it didn't fall apart because of Leah. She didn't win anything. There was no emotional affair or cheating or whatever else. It was quieter than that. It was a bunch of tiny fractures we didn't really notice until this all forced us to look at them. After everything blew up, we tried. We had a few really honest conversations. We gave each other space. But once the dust settled, it just felt different. I think we were both trying to hold on to a version of us that only worked before all this. He wasn't the bad guy. He never was. But the way he withheld things not just about Leah, but other things too, it became clear how much we avoided uncomfortable conversations and how much resentment that quietly built up. We broke up around 6 weeks ago. It wasn't messy. Just two people realizing they weren't moving in the same direction anymore. I think we both knew it had run its course, but it still stung. We talked once after the split, mostly to sort out loose ends, and that's been it. I don't feel angry toward him. I don't regret the relationship, but I do wish I had seen sooner how much I was shrinking myself in it, just like I did with Leah. I've been doing okay. I spend a lot more time by myself now. Not in a sad way, just in a recalibrating kind of way. I've picked up a few new routines, started running again. I've been saying no to things more. That sounds small, but for someone who's always been a chronic yes person, it's been one of the bigger changes. I used to confuse being needed with being valued, and that's something I'm still unlearning. Lena and I still talk every once in a while. She moved out of the place she shared with Leah and found somewhere closer to her work. She said things got uncomfortable after I blocked Leah. Leah apparently turned a lot of that anger toward her, which I feel guilty about, but Lena never made me feel bad for it. She's been solid. If anything, I'm grateful to her for being the one person who was willing to call out what she saw, instead of brushing it off as someone just grieving. That couldn't have been easy. I've had a few messages here and there from people reading the older posts. Some were kind, some weren't. A couple people said I overreacted. That grief does weird things to people, and I should have handled it more delicately. I won't pretend those didn't get to me at first. They did. But I sat with it and came to the conclusion that most people commenting don't know the whole thing. Not really. They know what I wrote. They didn't live it. And honestly, even if they had all the facts, I still don't owe anyone a gentler version of what happened just to make it easier to understand. Grief doesn't give someone a free pass to cross other people's boundaries. It doesn't justify manipulation. It doesn't excuse someone trying to wedge themselves into a relationship that didn't belong to them. I know I did the right thing by walking away. That doesn't mean it was easy. That doesn't mean I didn't second-guess myself 100 times in the weeks afterward. But looking back now, the version of me who wrote that first post feels like a different person. Someone who was exhausted, unsure, and constantly trying to make space for people who had no intention of doing the same for her. I'm not there anymore. I'm not stuck in it. I don't know if Leah meant every word in her letter. I don't know if she really sees what she did clearly, or if she's just embarrassed she got called out. But I don't need her answer to that. I've made peace with not having the closure I thought I needed. Sometimes the best thing you can do is put the letter back in the drawer and move on with your life. So yeah, this is the last update. I'm done holding it. Thanks to everyone who gave thoughtful, honest advice. It helped more than I realized at the time. I don't know what's next, but I feel more grounded now than I have in a long time.